Inexpedient to legislate, and if there's a second, I would then like to touch on it.
Second.
Okay, we've got a second from Representative Gardner, so we've got a motion and a second of ITL. Representative O'Connor, to speak to your motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this bill has been previously rejected a few years ago, and it again attempts to require the national food manufacturers, the New Hampshire food manufacturers, grocery retailers, and our farmers and farmers markets to label products that may have been produced or grown using genetic engineering. A process that had been in existence in this country and others for over 30 years and deemed safe by the most respectable and widely recognized academia, scientific and medical associations, such as the American Medical Association, the American Association of Advancements of Science, and World Health Organization. In the passage of this bill also put the state in a situation of litigation due to the unconstitutionality of this bill. It also incurred increased costs and penalties to our businesses and our consumers. There are current states that are in litigation that have initiated a cost of excess of millions of dollars. And that's what will happen to this state here if this bill ever passes and signed by the governor. I know personally of agencies and organizations that will initiate a lawsuit the day after this is signed. Which is interesting, the bill adds severe penalties on our businesses of up to $1,000 per day for incorrect labeling. Now just think about this for a minute. Our small farmers, small businesses that are on borderlines, that if labeled incorrectly, would be penalized. One of the problems, one of our sister states has a bill that talks to the same thing, but it is not the same bill as we have. So therefore, our farmers, our businesses would be in conflict with those laws over there as those businesses would be in conflict with our laws here. The bill also incurs costs to the state and down into our towns. As to the state level, our Department of HHS would be forced to initiate $100,000, $200,000 a year personnel costs. There is no funding for that whatsoever in the bills. Interesting, the Attorney General also would be forced and be required to make rules. He'll also be required to conduct civil investigations. He'll be required to mandate civil action. There's no fiscal note attached to this, saying what those costs would be and who would pay for those costs. Another concern, such as my town in Derry, we are one of 16 statewide self-inspecting towns. The state has no authority in self-inspecting towns. This bill mandates that the self-inspecting towns would be forced to conduct enforcement and also civil action with no state fiscal support. So is there a solution? Yes, there is a solution. The FDA recently, as close as November of 2015, has released labeling guidance for those companies that wish to label their products genetically engineered. An example of that is Campbell Soup a few weeks ago announcing that they're going to do that. And as long as you follow the guidance, it can be available out there. There are other corporations that are free and voluntarily can label their products. Anybody can go out there and go to organic. If you want organic, there's your choice. You go out to another section and you'll see that there is third-party certifications, and you'll see that special logo on there says GMO free. So that is available. Again, this is a marketing tool, such as Campbell's, and Campbell's is willing to put that label on there so they can upsell the same can. And it's a proven fact that the cost difference by labeling, whether it be organic and GMOs, which is no difference between the nutritional value or the appearance of the product. So finally, the industry has been put forward under this modern technology, something that's called Smart Label. And you'll start seeing that this coming summer. They're not waiting for the H.R. 1599, which is in the U.S. Congress right now. It already passed the House of Congress. It is in the it's in the Senate right now and going through the Agricultural Committee. Some of us have even wrote letters to the senators along with probably over 200 to 300 manufacturers supporting the uniform labeling that's across the nation so we don't have an interstate commerce shipping problem. The smart label will allow somebody with a smartphone to be able to go up to a package and all those fancy little barcodes. It'll give them not only information on the package, but you can research more information than you ever wanted to know about that particular product before. If you don't have a smartphone, such as I do, with a flip phone, then all the stores do have scanners that are in there. And you'll be able to take that product and be able to learn as much as you want about it. So that would resolve the issue, and that will be done by this summer. So with that, I will conclude.
Thank you. Discussion. Representative Bixby.
A couple of points. In terms of the vetting by federal agencies, the initial decision by the FDA back in 1992 that established basically the agency was asked at that point to make a decision about how genetically engineered foods should be handled. At that point, there were a number of FDA scientists who were saying, this is a problematic thing, we should go cautiously, we should go on a trait-by-trait basis. And the chief administrator of the FDA said, I have the right to overrule my scientists. I'm going to say that it is genetically engineered foods are substantially equivalent to the non-engineered foods. And that is how the FDA established that genetically engineered foods are generally recognized as safe. It did not go through the appropriate scientific review at the FDA at that point. That ruling was challenged in the late 90s in a lawsuit. That lawsuit was rejected on the basis that upper administrators have the right to overrule their underlings. Still, no judgment on a scientific basis. The labeling that is, the testing that is done for genetically engineered foods before going to market is two-pronged. One is federal, it is a USDA test, and it is simply to determine if the alternate organisms will be either a pest problem or a weed problem, or a disease problem. If there is no risk of disease or super weediness with those with the engineered organism, they are passed by the USDA. On the FDA end, the review is entirely optional at the choice of the companies who are producing them. There is a voluntary review process where the companies that are producing the organisms do however much safety testing they deem necessary and forward any results that they choose to forward to the FDA, at which point the FDA reads those and says, yes, we read them. We recognize that you submitted these. So essentially, there is no third-party independent testing of any genetically engineered product that goes to market. The basic process of genetic engineering is fundamentally safe. The World Health Organization says that. However, they also say that the real issue is what traits have been inserted. And for that, the World Health Organization says it should be done on a trait-by-trait basis. Many other organizations have said this as well. We had testimony in our hearing last week that said that trait-by-trait is the appropriate way to deal with it. There is no independent trait-by-trait assessment in this country. And if we decide that the companies that are producing these are entirely trustworthy, and we really want, and we have a good track record to say that they have, in fact, in the past, served the public well by their safety assessments, then maybe we should say, yes, this is not necessary. However, if there is any doubt, if there's anything that those companies do that would create doubt in our citizens' mind as to whether their safety assessment is appropriate, then we should give the choice to the people who are buying the products. And Monsanto not only makes and genetically engineered foods, they also made Agent Orange and denied any effect on our veterans for decades. They polluted streams and rivers in West Virginia with dioxins and denied any responsibility. They polluted streams in Alabama, once again denied any responsibility. So it is reasonable for our citizens to say, maybe we don't entirely trust Monsanto to do the testing. And if that's the case, we should give them the choice by putting a little label on package saying, this is produced with genetic engineering. They can make their own choice. We don't, if this bill were about banning genetic engineering, I would be dead set against it. But it's simply about putting a small label on saying that this product was genetically engineered. We give our citizens the choice of making that appropriate decision. As for the litigation issue, we had testimony last week that given that the enactment clause in this bill places it a year after the law goes into effect in Vermont, that will be settled case law by the time that this could possibly go to litigation, and that is a non-issue.
Representative O'Connor.
Thank you. And in all due respect to Representative Bixby, excuse me, I'm trying to hold my voice here. For disclosure's sake, I was in the dairy industry prior to retiring, and one of my jobs within the industry was on the non-commissioned interstate milk shippers, which is on the executive board. A few of the industries appointed, along with FDA and representatives from all state agencies, usually the Department of Agriculture and Public Health. One of the errors that Representative Bixby indicated is the FDA process. The FDA process, and I've worked with many of the food scientists, especially outside of Illinois where their headquarters are, is that there is a review process. It's a third-party certification review process. And it's not something that takes half a week. It takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years to go through this process. Even on just antibiotics, the process of doing that for injecting, whether you call it over-the-counter or under-the-counter labeled antibiotic, it's a huge, difficult, intense process that goes through. So I just want to put that to bed. As far as putting GMO label on it, then you're declaring that that product is different. There is no scientific proof that that product is any different than the product either with the GMO seed that was initiated by, I guess this is Monsanto, but Monsanto is only one of many, many companies, along with the universities that are actually manufacturing and doing genetically biotechnology engineering. So I just want to make sure that was put out there. So with that,
Okay. Representative Groom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to the member from Dover, if Monsanto is as guilty as they are, and if this bill was only for food made by Monsanto, then I would say, good point. But we'd be putting a label on everybody's food, and we'd be claiming them on that basis, that everybody's guilty, and I don't see where this bill can go that far. And if we take that to its logical extreme, then after what happened in Colorado on the Animas River, we should certainly get the EPA out of the regulating business related to waters in the United States. So.
Representative Said.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I personally think that there is no health risk whatsoever in the process of genetic engineering on our food. And as far as labeling is concerned, which this bill concerns, this bill is about labeling. The proponents of this bill claim that they have a right to know and how their food is grown. But my question is, where does one stop? If we mandate genetic engineering be conspicuously placed on a label, what about pesticides? I mean, people hate pesticides, those are dangerous as well. Do we have a pesticide What about biosolids? What about nitrogen? What about non-documented labor? What about underage labor? The list of things that people are concerned about as far as their food is concerned goes on, and if we mandate one, where are we going to stop? That is my problem.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree with Representative said. I tried to look back to see where this all started. And from what I've been able to piece together, it seems that it was started because of the fear of people eating pesticides. And the answer to that was to genetically engineer plants to be more tolerant to disease and insects, so that not as much pesticide would have to use. And as far as the labeling, we already have products that are voluntarily labeled. We have, organic certified products that are an option. It's not that there isn't options out there, so I think this is something that really needs to be looked at the federal level, and, hopefully they will.
Representative Smith. Somehow I expected that.
First of all, I would respond to Representative Howard. The Roundup Ready seeds that are used to grow, to my knowledge, enable the farmer to use more pesticides or use the Roundup or the glyphosate without fear that it will harm the genetically engineered plant. It will only kill the weeds. So therefore, it's quite possible that more herbicides could be used in that instance. But I do agree with everyone who has said this is a labeling bill, and what I hear from my constituents is that they would like to see the genetically engineered foods labeled. They would like to know when they go to the supermarket. Do I think they're bad for you? I don't really know for sure. There is there are many reports, there is a lot of secondhand evidence that people say, well, I know someone who, and I can't say that, but if the preponderance of people that I talk to are saying, I want this labeled. I read someone's Facebook page yesterday and said, I'm voting for Bernie Sanders because he wants to have GMO foods labeled. And I'm like, whoa, that's huge for, what is the reason someone would vote for a candidate. But it's a labeling bill, and I would also agree with, I think it was Representative Bixby that talked about, as far as the legality and the lawsuits, that since this bill does not take effect until a year after Vermont does, and Vermont is now going through litigation, so it seems like that will be a moot point by the time we get to that. Thank you.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you. I wanted to speak to the part of the bill that says it would have on-package labeling that says produced with genetic engineering, because I'm hearing from a lot of constituents of various ages, actually, that they do not use QR codes or smart labels, and particularly parents who are sort of juggling one child in one hand and one in the cart, that they want something that is usable. So not just are there a lot of consumers who want this, I've heard that, but that they're not happy with what the movement is at the federal level for a smart label or a QR code, because the older folks will all have smartphones, and then some of the younger folks who we might expect to use their QR codes don't actually. Yeah, it's not generational. Trust me, my husband just got one last week. But
Yeah, I was only going to say I'm old and I've got a smartphone.
Exactly. And so to have this language in here that's very easily seen on the package and doesn't require jumping through what I would think is kind of a lot of hoops when you're shopping, has been a very important part of this bill for people that I've talked to. And then one more thing. With due respect to Representative O'Connor, what I think we're missing in the scientific field is without labeling, we don't have long-term epidemiological studies where we can look at what the long-term effects are of genetically engineered foods on our human population. And I think that is sort of the next area that needs to be studied and can't really be studied without labeling. And I don't know where that would lead, but I think that's the what this would help with.
Further, Representative Bixby.
I just wanted to clear up a little bit of confusion in terms of what the FDA studies. When it comes to studying drugs and feed additives, there is an involved third-party study mechanism. When it comes to studying genetically engineered foods, because they have been declared as generally recognized as safe, they have deemed that third-party review unnecessary. So the third-party review does not happen for things that are generally recognized as safe. They do happen for things like the antibiotics or any drug that's going to market. It also is, that third-party review is present for a food additive that is a chemical additive that would be new to the food. That would be something that would be reviewed. However, because of that generally recognized as safe declaration, there is no third-party review.
Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, this is my first exposure to this issue. I've tried to learn a lot in a little bit of time. I've done my best, listened to both sides, had a lot of constituents on both sides of the issue. Get in touch with me about it. I think for me it comes down to the fact that I think people have the right to know what's in the food they're eating, and they have a right to get it as easily as possible. And I think that, and I have nothing against GMOs or genetically engineered food. I have no problem that it's either a health or safety issue, but I do think the majority of people that contacted me are interested in that right to know what's in their food and have an easy access to that information. And that's the direction I'm going to be voting in today. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, I will take this opportunity to give my position, and then we'll go to a vote. So, first, you're not going to hear me ever say people don't have a right to know. This bill is unconstitutional. I am just absolutely convinced. The only attorney I have ever heard say it's constitutional was the lady from the Vermont Law School who advised Vermont that their bill was constitutional. By the way, the same law school, I understand the constitutional lawyer said it was unconstitutional. Over the last 2 terms, we've had a couple of constitutional lawyers in here that said it was unconstitutional. And they all list 3 reasons. The first being it's a violation of a company's First Amendment rights, compelled speech. Second is it's violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause. And the third is there is a federal preemption, food safety warning labels, and these are warning labels, are the purview of the federal government, specifically the FDA. We have, as states, given that authority to them. Vermont passed the law very, very similar to this. They are being sued on constitutional grounds. I don't know if we'll get drug into that or not, but if we pass this bill, even if the date is a year out, who's to say we're not going to be drugged into the lawsuit? And I know the Attorney General in Vermont had said he expects that that bill will cost them $12 million to defend. It's a federal issue. Even the pro-labeling people on more than one occasion here at the hearing said that they believe the right place to do it is at the federal level. I couldn't agree more. And I'm not gonna talk about the bill that's in the Senate, that's already passed the House, because I don't know that the Senate has any will right now to take that on. I think it's just gonna sit in committee. However, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, has pulled together all of these stakeholders to see if they can work out a compromise. He's got Republicans and Democrats for both the House and the Senate. He's got the food manufacturers, he's got agriculture, he's got a whole bunch of people. And he is trying to get them to come together with something in the way of a compromise that all will agree to. And I think we need to give them that time to do that. The free market will take care of this. I hold Campbell Soup up as an example. Campbell Soup said, we're not gonna wait for states, we're not gonna wait for the federal government, we'll label. And, you know, all the more power to them, I think they should. It's anybody today can put contains no GMO label on their food. If you're, and folks say well, it's just an informational label. If you make cornflakes, it's not an informational label, it's a skull and crossbones. And then, I guess one of the things that should be important to us, and no one has ever mentioned, there are going to be enforcement costs to this. It is going to a finance committee because there are costs. There's going to be costs to Health and Human Services, the food protection people who are going to enforce this. There are going to be costs to the Attorney General's office. And guess what? There's no money and no people in the bill. How are you going to enforce it? Or how can you pass a bill without people and money to do the enforcement? So with that, I'm going to vote in favor of the ITL, and I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Okay, Representative O'Connor.
Yes.
Okay, Representative Bruin.
Yes.
Peckham, yes. Representative Gordon.
Yes.
Representative Brewster.
Yes.
Representative Prolex.
Prove.
Yes.
Okay, what was
Not
your,
the first one.
what was your answer?
Yes.
Representative Hinch?
Yes.
Representative Darrow?
No.
No. Representative Howard?
Yes.
Representative Tilton?
Yes.
Representative Sad?
Yes.
Representative Smith?
No.
Representative Bixby?
No.
Representative Gardner?
Yes.
Representative Turcott?
No.
Representative Doherty?
No.
Representative Saunderson?
No.
Representative Simpson?
No.
And Representative Hafner?
Yes.
Okay. So it was 12 to 7. So it's 12 in favor and 7 against.
So the ITL stands. Of course, it will not go on the consent calendar. And with that, I will close the executive session and thank everyone for their time.
No, it was not. Susan Darrow. Stephen
Darrow. He's the guy next to me.
Yeah, I'm missing one person that voted.